Bam. That's it. Finally remembered. I'm Reverend Michelle Scripture Brown, and it's my pleasure to lead this group every week. We meet to stimulate thought, create connection, and expand consciousness. The Hummingbird Assembly is an assembly of people who will teach each other to find the miracle of joyful living from life's circumstances to accomplish that which seems impossible. Our announcements are the same as they have been for some past weeks, except that this time our boxes are over on the side table, which makes it a little bit easier to get to them. The green box, in my opinion, is the most important. This is where I invite you to put in discussion topics. This is your assembly, so I want to make sure that we're talking about what you would like to discuss. If you're following us online, please feel free to comment on either the YouTube video or on our Facebook page to let us know what you'd like to talk about so that we can be discussing the things that you too would like to discuss. The white box is where we collect donations to support the ongoing costs of a startup church. So please feel free to do that. And I put in new envelopes this week. So if you need an envelope, write your name on it. And we'll be tracking so that maybe one day we'll be able to issue receipts. If you do choose an envelope, please don't seal it so that we can continue to reuse them ongoing. Okay. The only other thing is that we continue to collect awakening stories. So if you would like to share about your experience of coming to find the Hummingbird Assembly, or that moment when you realized that perhaps you weren't a victim of your life after all, perhaps everything had happened to bring you to the point that you're at. We would love it if you wanted to send it in to us. We can be reached at admin@hummingbirdAssembly.com. The intention is to one day put all of the stories into an ebook to share with people when they come to our website so that they won't feel quite so alone as they go through this process. All right, and now that all of that's out of the way, shall we begin with our opening intention? May I come to understand that blessings are everywhere, that my attitude will affect outcomes, and that challenges are often gifts in disguise. May I come to trust that most things can get better with time, that my instincts and gut feelings have value, and that a positive attitude makes things go smoother. May I come to see that I have many skills and talents I can use, that I am a positive influence on many people, and that there are those around me who wish me well. May I come to value that today is a blessing to be enjoyed, that each person is unique and important, and that each moment of my life has meaning. So our topic of discussion today, I'm just floating it out there, and we'll see. I want to talk about an emotion that can inspire us, but mostly I think ruin us. And that emotion is guilt. I think most of us carry that. And
I'll second that emotion. Yeah, exactly. Good one. I gave up guilt a long time ago.
How did you do that?
I made the choice. It's like, I can feel guilty if I want, and I can feel not guilty if I want.
So what does it mean to feel guilty? I'd like to discuss that a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we're feeling regretful.
Responsible.
Yeah.
I've often said that guilt is not an actual emotion. It's what we experience when we try to take responsibility for other people.
That's pretty well said.
Yeah.
And I came to that because someone, Mary Beth, who I'm sure is not watching right now because nobody's attending, but Mary Beth once said to me, there are really only two emotions in this world, and they are love and fear. And so if you're not feeling love, everything else you're feeling is fear. And I hated that so much. But it's encouraged me to explore a little bit more, and I don't know. I think guilt is a really big deal.
Yeah, it's huge, and we hold ourselves back with guilt.
So I Googled a little bit about what is guilt, spiritually speaking, and I have a few writings to share. One of them comes from a Wiccan spirituality site, and what she says is, guilt is the lazy way out of remorse. You keep beating yourself up for something that you've done, something in the past. This does not sound fun, so why do we keep going there? Because guilt feeds shame, and it also feeds on shame. The more shame that is lurking in your subconscious, the more susceptible you are to feeling this dastardly emotion. You believe that you should feel bad when you make mistakes or do something that you wish you didn't. That carries on the shame cycle. But the biggest attraction may be that guilt is safe. It's much easier than remorse, because remorse gives you power. Guilt lets you off the hook. It's easy to feel bad about the past because then you don't have to change anything. After all, you can't change the past. But instead of looking at how you can do better in the future, you cling to the misery of what you did before. Guilt is an indulgence. It's like an indulgence. It's like eating and watching TV instead of going for a walk. Good morning. In the moment, it may feel like the best thing, but it does not serve you. It doesn't strengthen you. It weakens you.
Really, it drives you down. And you don't even know that you're going down.
Yeah.
I think.
We're talking about guilt and whether or not, well, we're just talking about it. And what I shared in the beginning was that I've come to understand that guilt is not actually an emotion. It's what we experience when we try to take responsibility for other people's, their feelings, their experiences, their paths.
What about what we?
Pardon me?
What about how we make other people feel? Because I know
Right.
personally, I feel guilt or shame after a situation that has come up, and I realize afterwards that should have had a VA. Why did it go that way? Why didn't I do this way? Now this person and this person feel like shit because of my neglect of realizing after.
But that's you taking responsibility for their response.
And you're not responsible for what other people feel.
Yeah, but even if they
You
don't,
may have conducted yourself in a way that you didn't like. You know what I mean?
That's something different,
That's
right?
something different. But you're not responsible for what other people feel.
yeah, but if they don't even say anything,
Yeah.
like if they don't show any feeling or
That's on them.
So you're probably imagining what they've gone away feeling, and you
Right.
don't really know because then it's shared that.
Or projecting
I
you.
think what he's saying is if you, sorry, I'm leaving. What he's saying is that if you behave in a way that you shouldn't have behaved, after the fact, you feel the guilt, irrespective of how you made them feel.
So like you
know
had an
you-
explosion, if you got angry at your children,
Right.
and you feel guilty because you had an explosion of rage for
And
your
you should have
children.
behaved in a way.
You should have spoken to them lovingly or whatever. Right.
That would be guilt on you, not based on their emotions, based on your behavior.
Right. So another reading that I want to share, because I think it will speak to this. Does everybody know who Gary Zukov is?
Yeah.
Gary Zukov. He's an author. He wrote Seed of the Soul. He wrote a whole bunch of other books. He was very prevalent in the early 90s, and Oprah loved him. So what he writes about guilt is that many people think that guilt is a natural experience. It is a familiar experience, but it is not healthy or productive. It serves no constructive purpose. So how can that be? Here are 6 things to think about the next time you are feeling guilty. Number 1, guilt comes from fear. Your spiritual growth requires challenging fear and cultivating love. Holding on to your thoughts and feelings of guilt will not support you or anyone else. They prevent you from living in love, creating in love, and enjoying yourself in love. Number 2 speaks exactly to what I think we're talking about. Guilt impairs your ability to learn from your experiences. When you see something that you could have done differently or wish you had done differently, remember how you could have spoken or acted in love instead of fear, so that you can apply what you've learned next time, so that you don't make yourself feel more guilty. Your experiences are often designed to inform, support, and benefit you, not to cause you to contract into fear and remorse.
So you're saying flip it and flip it quick. Like, you still have to experience it, but then
We learn from
but
it, right?
learn from it instead of sit and wallow in the horrible feeling. Switch it into the better.
And looking at that example that I was sharing about, being angry with your children, it happens all the time, right? If you have young kids, you get angry with them and you say things to them. And then afterwards, you're like, I should not have said that. And I remember very clearly many times losing my cool entirely. And afterwards feeling like I was just weeping, so upset with how I treated these people who I love. And I would think about what I wanted to do differently, but I'm really action focused and in the moment focused. So I would always go back to my children and say to them, I totally lost my cool with you, and I'm so sorry for that. Because nobody should speak to you like I spoke to you. And I'm going to do better to work better with you with my words. And I love you, and I'm so sorry. You have to humble yourself in front of your children if you're going to ultimately take responsibility for what you've created. And of course, it's a 5-year-old little boy who's like, dude, I am with Lego now. I am not in this moment with you anymore, but it's okay, Mom. It's okay. Do you want to build this Chewbacca with me?
What about when it's to yourself? What about when you treated yourself and you spoke to yourself that way? And we've spoken about this before. You'll say, oh, I am such a bitch to myself. Well, I love you, bitch. I love you. I love like that. So still look like, but it's very difficult to, and I'm talking about self-directed talk.
Yeah.
Because after that, you still feel guilt too, right?
Oh my God, Michelle's going to tell me I shouldn't be saying this, right?
Yeah, and then I shouldn't. It's the same thing though. You are. Then you can't say I'm not responsible for the way I made myself feel.
I don't know. Anybody want to take this?
I think we can.
You're not responsible for the way you make yourself feel.
You are for sure. Again, you say, okay, done with that, moving on. I'm sorry, self. I love you. I won't be shitting all over you again. I love the shitting.
I know.
No shitting all over yourself.
Yeah. Guilt is an experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Guilt is an
I'm like so self-destructive.
So, number 3, guilt is an experience of a frightened part of your personality, just as the actions you regret come from a frightened part of your personality. Following fear with fear moves you in the opposite direction of that of your spiritual development, which is required to be towards love. So I think to answer your question, it's interesting how these questions are rolling out in Gary's pattern here, because I think what you should do then is say, okay, what am I afraid of in this moment? Oh, I was just really mean to me. What am I afraid of in this moment? I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me. I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of whatever that kernel is. I'm afraid of succeeding. That's a big one. That's the big one. And then you say, thank you, and I love you to that. And you can point out all of the other ways in your life where you've been accepted, loved. All the other times you had experiences where it didn't work out the way you're giving yourself shit for. What do you think about that? Anybody have any comment? Okay, so number 4 says, guilt keeps you from being honest with others and yourself. You cannot cause emotional pain in another person. You hear that? You cannot cause emotional pain in another person.
Seriously?
That's why my kids were like, dude, I've moved on. I'm playing Lego now. I'm glad you're having this whole existential experience, but could you get out of my way? You cannot cause emotional pain in another person. You can trigger emotional pain in someone else, but the pain that is triggered comes from inside of them, not from you. It is an opportunity for them to learn about themselves. Your actions are your responsibility. If they come from fear rather than love, they will create painful consequences for you.
Read that again, that last bit. If they come from,
If your actions come from fear rather than love, they will create painful consequences for you. Anybody?
There's somebody that's telling you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. You just have to love yourself and go, that's their choice of reaction.
Or perhaps you love them.
So that's a heavy burden to be carried. I'm speaking from experience. When it's you put that, I put that on myself to fix the situation, and having somebody constantly tell you it's you, it can't be fixed because it's them.
Right.
you can't fix it.
I tried. I fucking tried.
Don't we all?
Enough to go out of my mind. It's a tough burden to carry. And to make them, or try to get them to realize that what they're projecting is them. It's like, if you tell me that shit, it's not true, it's you, it's you. It's hard to, it's hard to fix.
Because they have to fix themselves.
And
And you know, if they're not at a place or willing to see that, you suffer the consequences.
Or you walk away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or you love them. Or you love them. You love them, warts and all. You love them with all of their flaws to the best of your capacity.
Don't call them warts. Warts are contagious.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, don't call them warts. Warts are contagious.
Not all warts are. Okay, wrinkles and all? No, we just have a genius tool for that. Love and flaws and all? Scars and all? You love them wounded because ultimately how you treat other people is how you treat you. How you treat other people has nothing to do with you. I mean, with them, it has everything to do with you and how you love you. So if you feel like you're constantly trying to please that person who's like, no, it's you, it's you, it's you. If you're feeling that way and you don't succeed, you feel like you will never succeed at loving you.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to love you, because if you don't love you, you can't love anyone, and nobody can love you either. There's a lot of silence in here today.
Big pills. Big pill to swallow.
Right? Because you think you love you. Because who wouldn't? I mean, I've met you. I want to go back to number one, given what we just uncovered, because we glossed over it quickly to get to the answer of the question that was in front of us. Your spiritual growth requires challenging fear and cultivating love. Holding on to your thoughts and feeling of guilt will not support you or anyone else. They prevent you from living in love, creating in love, and enjoying yourself in love.
Read that again.
Your spiritual growth requires challenging fear and cultivating love. Holding on to your thoughts and feeling of guilt will not support you or anyone else. They prevent you from living in love, creating in love, and enjoying yourself in love. It always comes back to love. I feel like we need to say it. I feel like we need to say, I love you. Let's say it 3 times. I love you. I love you. I love you.
I love you.
10. Bam. Guilt keeps you from being honest with others and yourself. We talked about this one, right? I'm coming back to that because that line kills me. You cannot cause emotional pain in another person. So did we answer that question? Like, what do you do when that person's always like, it's you, it's you, it's you? Did we get there? A relationship between guilt and forgiveness may surprise you. This is number 5. I think I'm going to like this one. Guilt is actually a twisted or manipulative way of seeking forgiveness. It is the belief that if you inflict suffering on yourself for your choices, another will forgive you.
That's a mic.
This is the perspective of the frightened part of your personality that feels guilty. I'm going to read this one again.
Yeah.
Guilt is actually a twisted or manipulative way of seeking forgiveness. It is the belief that if you inflict suffering on yourself for your choices, another will forgive you for them. This is the perspective of the frightened part of your personality that feels guilty. So in reading this, it's not only that guilt is what we experience when we try to take responsibility for other people's feelings. It's what we experience when we try to push off our responsibility for our own feelings. Right?
Yeah.
You said at the beginning that a few years ago you gave up on guilt. You're like, this is an addiction and I'm done. How was that? How did you do it?
I made a choice. You know, through, lots of psychotherapy and stuff. It was like, I really came to realize that feelings, you can choose your feelings. Or you can choose your feelings. And I realized that guilt is a completely useless feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore.
So what do you do then when you feel like you've found something you need forgiveness for? How do you figure out that it's that you're seeking forgiveness?
How do I deal with it? If I feel that I've done something.
Well, I'm just thinking about if we wanted to follow in your footsteps and release guilt as a habit, because feelings are habits. If we wanted to release it, how do we manage these things? You know what I mean? Like if you would have felt guilty about yelling at your kids, what would you have done?
As you would have done. I would have, said, you know what, I can work with myself in that.
If you feel guilty that you haven't called your parents in a week. If you feel guilty that you're calling in sick and you're not actually sick. If you feel guilty that you were late because somebody had dinner ready for you. But how do you process these experiences? What does life on the other side look like, Bev?
It's more joyful, because you look at the vibration levels of those particular feelings, and I don't even default to guilt anymore. So I don't know. I can't tell you how I deal with that.
You just don't.
I just
don't.
Choose not to go there.
What's in its place?
Love is in its place. For sure.
My other girlfriend always says, oh gosh, I'm going to mess it up now. Accept everything. No.
I'm trying to hear you, Haley.
I'm trying to remember what it is. Zena always says it. She says, accept everything, resist nothing.
So even when she's going through a situation, which for me, I'm getting better at it, but would be in like a whirlwind of getting it done or whatever, and she's just like, la la la, and that would actually stress me out. But watching her and learning from her, I'm like, she doesn't even care if the food's not cleaned up before the sun goes down at camping.
Right.
So I'm like, why do I care? You know what, if the raccoons are gonna eat it, maybe they're hungry. Like, you know, just letting it go. Like that was a specific incident, but like just accepting, releasing control. It's a hard one.
Yeah, you don't have to be perfect.
No.
And I think guilt is tied to perfection.
Yes, I
It
think
is.
so, yeah.
I think it's very much tied to perfection.
You're not good enough because
Yeah.
they feel bad or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like the eye roll.
I think we're really missing that.
Perfect.
Maybe it's just important to me, which is always possible. I feel like this forgiveness piece is significant. I always talk about how, you know, how we respond to our world has less to do with who we are as fully formed adults and more about what we experienced before we were 7. So what did we think about ourselves then? What did we need forgiveness for then? Because that's what's informing your reactions and your responses. And what he's saying here is that guilt is a twisted or manipulative way of seeking forgiveness. It is the belief that if you inflict suffering on yourself for your choices, another will forgive you for them. That's a big thing. You think you weren't sure?
I'm just I'm thinking it through.
So perhaps, you know, in that moment where I yelled at my kids and was really emotionally unwound about what I needed to do was forgive me.
Yeah.
Because maybe when I went to them and I said all those things that I said that were lovingly communicated to them, I was asking them to forgive me.
Yeah.
I wanted them to say, I accept your apology. And what he said was, come play Lego with me.
That means accepted.
I don't think he thought there was anything to apologize for. He's like, there's mom doing her thing. I'm just going to go over there so I'm not in the middle of this. Right? He didn't feel like he needed to forgive me.
Yeah, I think
That's a huge moment.
I think there's a lot of that. I remember when very bad day at work, and I came in the following day because I felt really guilty about the tone in which I had spoken, and I apologized. And of course, I got, "What are you apologizing for? We didn't notice any difference from usual."
Bam.
Oh, that hurt.
Bam.
Like, I spent the entire night beating myself up over something that was a non-issue for anybody else.
People didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so caught up in your own negative thoughts. You can't see that they're not concerned about it, that it's a non-issue.
Can you apply this to the situation you were thinking about?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm Elsewhere.
Welcome back. Can you apply the idea of forgiveness to the situation you were thinking about earlier?
Forgiveness for myself.
Yeah. Because I didn't realize that I was seeking forgiveness from my kids when I shared that till literally just this moment.
See, I think children are different because they love you unconditionally. They're, in my opinion, they're not the same as adults.
It's very
Right?
true.
You can yell at them 1 minute,
Very
like you
true.
said it 2 minutes later. What are you forgiving me for, or forgiving yourself for? It's whatever. You did what you did, and
Have your moment.
yeah,
Come play Logo.
Go play Logo.
Yeah.
Now with adults, it's they take it very personally. Forgiving myself, I really don't think in the situation that I'm speaking of, I have nothing to forgive myself for. You know what I mean? It was, it's just you. okay, what the fuck did I do?
Right.
Yeah, I really don't see anything that I can forgive myself for. I did nothing wrong.
And that's a great realization, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you apply that thought right there, I have nothing to forgive myself for, I did nothing wrong, back to the you who was 7 and younger, does that free you? Did your 7 and younger self need to hear that?
For sure.
Because I think that's the moment, right? I needed to hear that in 7 and younger for what happened in my life. And so I had to say that I have to say that to myself now that I've had this realization. Because one of the very basic facts of relationships is that it's an energetic exchange, right? And if you don't show up to the party in the way that you were, then you can't exchange energy in that level anymore. So once I say to myself who's 7 and under, you don't need anyone's forgiveness because this was not your fault. And I love you. I become changed. It's like you take your phone charger with you to Europe, but you don't have an adapter. Your life becomes Europe. It either will adapt for you or you will create a new space. Ooh, is that time? I heard a ding.
Oh, that's
The last thing that Gary Zukov wrote here, and I think this is a really profound list, is that you cannot give the gifts that your soul wants you to give while you are busy feeling guilty. You cannot give the gifts your soul wants you to give while you're busy being guilty. Your gift may be to raise a family, create a new kind of business, write books, dance, or any of countless things. Whatever it is, it will fulfill you as long as you give it and lead you, as long as you give it and lead you to your next gifts. It will bring you joy. You cannot give any of your gifts while you are caught in fear. For example, anger, jealousy, despair, superiority, inferiority, and of course, guilt. Anyone have any comment?
I would agree with it. It really resonates. It's true.
Yeah. I'm not even sure what to say in response to it.
Mm-hmm.
Except, wow. Oh, sorry, Haley?
my God, that's their whispering voices. I'm giving up control on the
Don't
children.
even
out
worry
there.
about them. They're supposed to be here and we need to hear them because they're evolving beside us. Osmosis, baby. Osmosis. You don't have to be guilty for the sound they're making, Haley. We forgive you. Now you forgive you.
To them, they are whispering.
I'm not convinced that kids know how to whisper.
No.
For very long.
No.
Even when they're not deaf kids. Deaf kids definitely never know how to whisper.
The last thing that came from that Wiccan spirituality site is that guilt destroys your compassion for yourself. It destroys your self-respect, your self-worth, your empowerment, and overall your happiness. It leads you to hurt others in a similar way. Because if you choose to suffer guilt, you're going to make sure others are suffering it with you. Don't show up to the party.
The guilt party?
Yeah. Forgive yourself.
So I remember doing that.
Forgive yourself.
Working very hard to make other people feel as bad as I felt.
Forgive yourself.
Thank God that's in the past.
Release yourself.
Yeah.
Love yourself, who was under 7. All those things that you thought about you when you were a kid, release you. Because you're actually just awesome.
Yes.
You actually are. It's really just a fundamental fact of being a divine and holy creature. Start whispering that to yourself. I'm awesome.
Saying that I'm a divine and holy creature.
You can totally whisper that one to you too. We've come to the end of our time here for discussion. Is there anything that anybody wants to say before we close this up?
I was just thinking about being awesome. Now you just tell the world. You know that phrase, fake it till you make it? Just do it. I started it many years ago. People say, hi, how are you? Nobody ever listens. And they, a lot of people don't care. We speak by rote, right? Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. And I started saying, I'm awesome. Always told everyone I was awesome, whether I believed it or not. And gradually, it made huge changes in me. Because it just keeps coming back to you.
The only thing I would say differently is don't fake it.
Yes, well, I don't anymore.
Now just say it and giggle.
I do.
I'm not sure I believe this, but I'm going to drop this bomb. Oh, I'm awesome.
It takes people back. And I always tell them, you are awesome. I wish I was awesome. You are.
But it's more important to say it to you now. In this new dimension, it's more important to say it to you than to say it to other people for validation.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Woo! Blinkety blink.
I
think that was a moment because the computer actually dimmed too, and it's not connected to anybody's power. Welcome. I think that was a true mic drop moment.
Yeah.
In the third dimension, we said things because we required validation to know that they were true. No longer is that required. When you're speaking your truth, you just need to speak it. You don't need people to agree with you.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It's how you feel.
But also, if you're seeing that they, like, you guys are a reflection of myself, then I am actually saying it to myself.
Yes. Yes. But sometimes it's easier to say it to other people.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry. It's much easier to say it to other people. And I'm always like, if I really feel strongly about somebody, I tell the world, like, you know, oh my God, I met this amazing person and I'm just oozing about this person all the time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I'm feeling good about me, I catch myself feeling good about me. It's really weird.
And then you want to do a self high five.
Well, I do, or I go, oh, wait a minute, that's weird. I don't remember if that's good. And then I'm like, oh. And I have to kind of keep myself feeling that way because it's almost like it's so odd.
You're programmed to shut yourself down when you do.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, start whispering to yourself, ooh, I'm awesome. Okay, let's end this conversation. Oh, because it's 11:11. Thank you, internets, for joining us. We will see you next week.